Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the digital meeting of Cabinet held via Microsoft Teams for Wednesday, the 17th of February, 2021. Welcome to our observers today and welcome to the press. Do we have any apologies this morning? Christina?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Just an apology from Richard Edmonds, Corporate Director for Education and Corporate Services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That'll be recorded and no others. Thank you. Okay, on to declarations of interest then. Councillors and officers are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and/or prejudicial interest in respect of any item of business on the agenda in accordance with the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution and the Code of Conduct for both officers and members. Thank you. Nothing to declare? Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, obviously as a standing item, as you're all aware, we note the forward Cabinet work programme. Is there any comments on that for accuracy? Is everyone content with that? Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, so we'll move to the main report of the day, and I'll hand over to Councillor Leonard Stenner.
Thank you, Leader. The purpose of the report is to seek Cabinet's endorsement of the 2021-22 budget proposals prior to final determination by Council on the 24th of February and to provide an update on the medium-term financial plan. I am very pleased to remind Cabinet colleagues that the 3.1% uplift in the provisional financial settlement, along with the proposed increase in council tax of 3.9%, will mean that there will be no requirement for any new savings to be identified to balance the budget for the 2021-22 financial year. Furthermore, the proposals in this report will also maintain service provision across the council, fund increasing demand and service pressures in key areas such as social services and education, enable new community-focused investments in areas such as Caerphilly Cares and the proposed Community Empowerment Fund, provide the capacity and resilience required to drive forward the Team Caerphilly Transformation Programme and Place Shaping Plan, address legacy issues in respect of income shortfalls in a number of service areas. Details of the 2021-22 final local government settlement will not be announced until the 2nd of March 2021. However, it is anticipated that this will not vary significantly from the position set out in the provisional settlement. The Council is on a journey of recovery, improvement and transformation, and the proposal set out in the report will provide a sound platform for us to move forward with our ambitious plans. It is important that I emphasise that the financial settlement does not cover the financial implications of the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, both in terms of the additional costs that continue to be incurred and income losses. These will continue to be funded through Welsh Government grants, and the position will be kept under close review as we move into the new financial year. Section 5.4 of the report and Appendix 2 provide details of the projected movement on general fund balances. Cabinet will recall that in previous years, the council tax surplus has been channelled through the general fund each year to support the base budget in the following financial year. In normal years, this surplus is estimated to be circa £1.050 million, but members will be aware that council tax collection has been adversely impacted during 2020-21 due to COVID-19. Whilst the Welsh Government has provided some funding to mitigate this, it would not be prudent at this stage to assume that council tax surplus will be achieved in the current year to support the budget for 2021-22. For 1 year only, it is therefore recommended that the £1.050 million required to support the 2021-22 budget should be funded through a call on the General Fund. Cabinet is asked to note that after also allowing for the projected take to work imbalances from anticipated underspend on the 2021 revenue budget, that the projected balance for the General Fund is £11.232 million. This represents 3.05% of the proposed 2021-22 net revenue budget, which is marginally above the minimum level of 3% that is recommended by the Section 151 officer. Whilst the 3.1% uplift in the financial settlement is welcomed, the future funding situation for local government is likely to be challenging due to the unprecedented physical impact of COVID-19 and the strain that this will put on public finances for years to come. Section 5.7 of the report provides details of the financial outlook for the 4-year period 2022-23 to 2025-26, and it is clear the significant savings will be required moving forward. The Council is well placed to deal with this challenge, and our transformation programme will be the key driver in ensuring that financial resilience is maintained in future years. In terms of recommendations, Cabinet are asked to endorse the revenue budget proposals for 2021-22 of £368.227 million as detailed throughout the report and summarised in Appendix 1. To endorse the proposal to appoint 4 fixed-term project managers for an initial period of 2 years to support the delivery of the Council's transformation programme and place shaping plan, with a total cost of £368,000 being funded from the £1.8 million reserve previously approved by Council to support the delivery of the mid-term financial plan. To note the movements on the General Fund in Appendix 2 and endorse the proposal that for 1 year only, £1.050 million of the General Fund balance should be used to support the 2021-22 budget, due to there being no assumed council tax surplus in the 2020-21 financial year. To endorse the proposed capital programme for the period 2021-22 to 2023-24 as set out in Appendix 3. To support the proposal to increase council tax by 3.9% for the 2021-22 financial year to ensure that a balanced budget is achieved. Council tax band D being set at £1,230.57. To note the updated mid-term financial plan set out in Appendix 4, showing an indicative potential savings requirement of £21.1 million for the 4-year period 2022-23 to 2025-26. I move.
Thank you, Councillor Stenner. Councillor Ridgewell.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Stenner. I'm delighted to be seconding this report, paving the way as it does for our truly ambitious transformation plans going forward.
Thank you. Councillor George.
Yeah, thank you. It's just a quick question, really. Where does our Band D sit in comparison with other local authorities?
I could take that, Leader.
Yeah, if you could, please.
There is only one authority with a lower Band D council tax than Caerphilly, and that is Pembrokeshire.
Well, thank you for that.
Okay. Councillor Cook.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Do we know how many households in Caerphilly are within bands A to C, which I understand will have the lowest weekly increase?
Yeah, I've also got that information. There is 79,754 households registered for council tax purposes in the Caerphilly County Borough. And of these, 60.627 are in bands A to C. That equates to 76.2%.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, Councillor Phipps.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure if this is for you, Councillor Stenner, or if Steve's on the call, but the report mentions council tax reduction scheme, and I'm just asking how many of our households actually benefit from that, please.
Okay, I can get the figures for the council tax reduction scheme as well. Households receiving financial support through the council tax reduction scheme, and I'm sure that I will be corrected by Mr. Harris if I'm incorrect, but is 16,800 households receiving financial support, and of that figure, 10,000 or just over 10,500 of these are benefiting from 100% reduction in their council tax payments.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Well, first of all, I've got to say, as the as the Wellbeing of Future Generation champion, before I ask the question, I've just got to say that this budget puts the necessary capacity in the organisation to really take the transformation, the commercialisation, the player shaping plans forward. So this council is planning for success, planning for growth, planning for a more positive, sustainable and resilient future for our residents. And I've got to say, it's a fantastic budget as far as I'm concerned. Best I've seen since I'm a cabinet member. At this budget setting period, councils, people in the press often focus on the percentage of increase that council. So 3.9 increase in one council is a different amount to a 3.9% increase in another council. I suppose it all depends where your base starts. So Councillor George just asked who's the lowest in Wales. Well, there we are. We're second to Pembrokeshire. But how do we, on a pounds, shilling and pence, compare to our, the authorities that surround us? Perhaps, I know, Blaenau Gwent or Monmouthshire, Torfaen, those councils.
Are you able to answer that, Councillor Stenner, or?
Yes, because obviously we look at our neighbours to see with great interest what's going on in neighbouring authorities, especially when it comes to council tax. Blaenau Gwent, in pounds, shillings and pence, as you put it, Councillor Morgan, a band D is £527 more per year than what it is in Caerphilly. Monmouthshire, I think that's £186 per year more than what it is in Caerphilly. And Merthyr Council, even though they haven't set their council taxes yet for 21-22, I don't believe they've done that yet. But at the moment, it's in the region of £485 per year more than a band D property is charged in Caerphilly.
Well, so if I could just come back on that. So you're telling me that Blaenau Gwent one was the one there that shocked me. So you're telling me that a band D property in Blaenau Gwent is paying over £500 a year more than they are than a band D property in Caerphilly?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor Morgan. And just on the back of that, then, I wonder if I could just ask, really, and I suppose really this is to the 151 officer. I'm curious to understand in terms of, where we're setting our council tax this year, in terms of resilience in the council tax base. Could you just sort of highlight to me, really, the importance of making sure that our base is resilient going forward in light of what Councillor Stenner's just said in her opening remarks in relation to 22 onwards, where we know that things are going to get quite tight. So I wonder if you could help explain that, Steve.
Yeah, sure, Leader, and morning, members. it is really important, that the increases in council tax are reflected in the base moving forward. If I refer you to the updated MTFP appended to the report, based on one scenario, it is showing that we could be looking at a potential savings requirement of 21.1 million for the 4-year period 22-23 to 25-26. And the figures that have been quoted to you this morning show that the Band D rate in Caerphilly is way below many other authorities. So you could argue there's a case for catching up on some of this as well to ensure that we maintain our financial resilience moving forward. So yes, it's essential it's in the base, and we cannot lose sight of the fact we can't just focus on the current year. We have to think of the pressures we will be facing moving forward. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much for that, Steve. So in effect, we do have to plan for that future, and as you say, it's really important that we do that. If I can bring in Councillor Gordon, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. It's not so much a question, but a comment, really. I draw the attention to 5.3.21 and 5.3.22, social services cost pressures and education lifelong learning cost pressures. I see we have put an extra £2.5 million into social services, which shows really how we care and look after the most vulnerable residents in our county, and also an extra just under £1.5 million into the education budget, which once again shows how we're looking after our children's education, especially in the time we find ourselves at the moment. I mean, we're in unprecedented times, and unfortunately, as have already been said, this is going to cost us in the future. So I just like to fetch people's attention to this, because once again, we are doing the right thing. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Councillor Ridgewell.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Councillor Gordon's just touched on the dire situation we're in with regard to COVID, and this is more of a question, I think, for our Section 151 officer, Mr. Harris. In terms of the consequential funding we're getting from central government, Steve, can you just explain a bit more how that fits into the budget?
Yeah, just to start with the current year, all of the additional costs we're incurring as a direct consequence of the pandemic are currently being claimed outside of our normal revenue budget arrangements. We're submitting monthly claims to the Welsh Government, and for the 9 months period to December, we claimed in excess of £10 million in respect of those additional costs. Similarly, where we're experiencing income losses directly linked to the pandemic, we're putting claims in on a quarterly basis. And the Welsh Government in total for the current year have received around £5 billion funding from the UK Government for the impact of COVID, not just for local government, obviously, but the wider impact. Slightly concerning moving forward is that the UK Government have currently only allocated £766 million to the Welsh Government next year for COVID. Clearly, that's significantly short of the sums allocated this year, albeit that we all hope that we will be coming out of this crisis and some of that financial impact will lessen moving forward. But that does reflect a financial risk for us. We will continue to claim next year, but clearly we will need to keep a very close eye on that situation as we move through the new financial year.
Thank you, Steve. Very helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Ridgewell. Councillor Whiting.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the additional capacity to support the transformation of place shaping plans. As Councillor Stella mentioned in the introduction to this report, we've seen now that there will be several £100 million going into the place shaping investment, which is planned over the next few years. And I think we can all agree that's going to bring massive benefits to all the corners of the county borough, which are sorely needed and much needed. And this is all happening at the same time as the corporate reviews under the Team Caerphilly transformation plan, and these really have the potential to reshape the council in some really fundamental and important ways. And all this as well is in the context of the COVID-19 recovery and response and everything that we've learned from that and everything that's helped us to change and improve with as well. So the question I have then is this additional capacity, how important is it? How important is it to have this investment in staff resource to deliver on these projects for the people of Caerphilly?
Yeah. Oh, Christina, did you want to come in and respond to that?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Whiting, for that question. In a nutshell, absolutely essential. Members, you've already outlined that we're still in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and you're fully aware of the massive response that this organisation has given our communities. And in order to drive this organisation forward, we are still delivering the 800 services per day that we normally deliver, albeit we've had to reshape some of them on the back of the COVID pandemic. But in order for us to invest that time and energy into a very significant and ambitious place shaping investment programme and the Team Caerphilly transformation agenda, it requires additional resource in order to drive that agenda forward. So quite frankly, without that resource, that transformation cannot be delivered at the scale and pace that you as the Cabinet have certainly articulated to me and members generally. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. Councillor Cook?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. It was touched on by Councillor Gordon, but I just want to remind members and the public the pandemic is continuing to have an impact on social services, and the situation remains very much in flux. Based on an assessment of current commitments, it's anticipated that growth of 2.5 million is required to meet the full year cost of placements in the 2021-2022 financial year. Within adult services, demand for home care services has increased by around 7% during 2020-2021, causing financial pressure of around £1 million for 2021-2022. Demand for supported living and shared lives placements has increased by a similar proportion, which has added further pressure around £1 million. And within children's services, there's been an increase in demand for residential care, including secure accommodation. But I'm very happy that this budget provides social services with the resources it needs to carry out its essential service in these unprecedented times. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan?
Yeah, okay, thanks, Leader. I just wonder if I could ask Steve Harris, you're talking about the possibility of looking for an extra £20 million over the next 4 years. I mean, these are very, very uncertain times with Brexit and COVID. We don't know the impact. Everything's unsettling for governments everywhere. How do we come about that figure? How much of an estimate, is it? And is there any sign yet that we may be getting multi-year settlements? Because for a council to have a year-on-year settlement, it's almost like, it's almost like not knowing what money you're having tomorrow. So multi-year settlements and the £20 million over the next 4 years.
Okay, happy to respond on that. Let's do the easier one first. In terms of multi-year settlements, you'll note from the report that currently the UK government has only undertaken a comprehensive spending review for 21-22. So unfortunately, beyond that, we have no indication currently of what our funding situation is going to look like. So for now, I'm sorry, but we're still in a situation where we're talking year-on-year settlements. The MTFP, the updated MTFP appended to the budget report, does set a scenario based on a range of assumptions, most significant being a 1% uplift year-on-year from WG funding, an assumed increase in council tax of 3.9% per annum, and obviously further pressures and growth requirements in respect of pay, social care and education, etc. Now that scenario does result in a potential savings requirement of 21.1 million, but I've also demonstrated in the report how sensitive that is to even small changes. For example, the range could be anything between 9.2 million and 32.7 million, depending on what the actual financial settlement is moving forward. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you for that, Stephen. That's a stark reminder, isn't it? Thanks, Sean, for that question, because it's a stark reminder, isn't it, about the vulnerabilities going forward, not having a comprehensive spending review that carries for 3 years, for example, and not having that, in our back pocket to know and to plan efficiently. Councillor Stenner.
Yeah, thank you, Leader, for allowing me back in. What I'd like to say is that we are all acutely aware of the situation that we find ourselves in. And I would think that there wouldn't be a family in the whole of the Caerphilly County has not been affected by COVID one way or another. I'm also fully aware of the concerns around the 3.9% rise in council tax. Residents are struggling. They're struggling with furlough and job losses, and finally family finances are struggling. The 3.9% rise in the council tax equates to 59 pence a week for a Band A property and 89 pence a week on a Band D property. And I realise that this increase will be a real concern for many families within the borough. However, I would urge these families to contact the authority and seek the help that is there. I cannot express myself strongly enough that we are committed to helping and supporting our most vulnerable residents, and this is reflected throughout this budget, especially with the Caerphilly Care Service, which I'm sure will be an asset to all of our residents. And it's also our most vulnerable residents that are going to benefit from the council tax reduction scheme. Thank you.
And can I say thank you, Councillor Stenner, for sort of raising that and for highlighting that very thing, because I think it's really important that we emphasise that Caerphilly Cares, you know, on what the uplift in our budget is giving us for our most vulnerable. And absolutely, we know how important the buddy scheme and all associated services around that have been throughout the pandemic. So thank you for raising that. You know, before we go to the vote, I'm pleased to be offering up this report, you know, because it's the first budget of many that it has no cuts. And I cannot emphasise that enough, because we have been plagued with cuts year on year. Now, I know we know the future is uncertain. I absolutely get that. But for this year, this is a no cuts budget. And that is important to note in what we're doing, you know, as we go on this journey for growth, you know, for our residents. It's really important. But, you know, more importantly, it's for that transformation journey. It's for our place shaping journey, you know, and I think it's also looking at our financial security going forward. So this budget is balanced, it is fair, and it is reasonable. So, you know, I just want to thank you for all your input there in raising some of the concerns that many people in the public will have around this budget. So thank you very much, everyone. If we can now go to the vote. Thank you, everyone, and that's unanimous. And thank you very much for your time. And thank you to our 151 officer, Steve Harris, and Chief Exec. Thank you very much. Thank you all.